This week, the government launched the National Digital Masterplan, a document that is supposed to guide investment in the IT industry as well as deepening IT integration in the country in the next 10 years. The document that is going to cover the period between 2022 to 2032 is quite an extensive document, and according to experts, this document is likely to change the face of IT ecosystem in the country. Joining us to help us understand more about the master plan is Cabinet Secretary in charge of ICT, Youth and Innovation, Mucheru. Thank you for finding time this afternoon to be with us here. Why is this document very important to the growth of ICT in Kenya?
A master plan is a plan. If you want to build a building, you must have your master plan, you must have your blueprint, so that you have something you can reference to see where you're going. You can have something that others can come and look at and say, okay, this is what the plan is for the country, this is how we can fit in. As you may have seen already, we have many investors that have come into the country, and they've come in because of the plans that we've put in place, whether it's our Vision 2030. And so for the ICT sector, we must have a plan that clearly makes it clear for investors, both local and international, where do we want to go? And what role can they actually play in that plan? So the importance of the plan is to bring and stitch everybody together. This is a plan for the country. The country is composed of private sector, the government, the regulators, the foreign investors. You know, you've got all the different players. And if all the players can see from one plan, this is where Kenya is headed, this is what we want to do, and especially for this ICT sector, then it is going to be a good roadmap, but also a guide for everybody to know which place that they can play their part and how they can benefit.
The ICT industry, I mean, it keeps on evolving on a daily basis and a weekly basis. So how are you going to ensure that even as you put a 10-year plan, you know, the plan that you have will be important and relevant 10 years to come?
I think one, even as we are catching up with the rest of the world in terms of technology, we can learn from what other countries have been doing. And therefore, we are not starting from scratch. We are not saying that we are the only ones that know what's going on. So we can see what other countries have done. So we have borrowed from other countries. But at the same time, there are some fundamental things that we know will continue, whether you want to change new technologies or introduce new things. So one, we need to train people. So the fact that we need to train people on new skills doesn't mean the skills are defined now. They will be defined as you move along. If new things come up, they'll be part of the training, ensuring that every Kenyan, for instance, in the master plan, we've said we want to train 20 million Kenyans on technology. We've said we want to train 300,000 civil servants, and we're going to use 10,000 professionals to do that training and bringing everybody together. We haven't gone as far as prescribing and saying, now you will train them on ABC. We are saying we're going to train, and so whatever is current, whatever is important, we will actually do that. And we've already seen some companies who have seen what we've done. They've already been doing an audit of, say, civil servants to know what skills they have, and then they're offering the training because they want their products to be the ones that these people are going to use because they are well trained in it. So we're beginning to see that competition, people coming in and training, others coming in and setting up, because once you set the foundation, whatever you build is easy. Everybody can see what they want to build. You've got a strong foundation. We have infrastructure. Again, in the master plan, we have said we want to have 10,000 kilometers of fiber. 10,000 kilometers of fiber means we'll have connectivity everywhere. We've said all 40,000...
100,000 kilometers or 10,000?
100,000 kilometers. We've already done 10,000 already with the current NOFB, the National Fiber Optic Cable. We're also saying we want 40,000 schools to be connected, all of them to have full broadband connectivity with 15,000 health centers. We're saying 20,000 hubs, ICT hubs for youth across all 1,450 wards that we have in the country. So these are plans that we're putting in place. If the technology improves, then well and good. Maybe we'll have better fiber or better speed, or maybe we'll use a new technology, but the master plan and the plan is that that's what we want to do, and I think we are moving in the right direction.
And this is not the first time that we are having a national digital master plan. I mean, we had one since from 2013 to 2017. What would you say that master plan helped this country to achieve?
So that was the master plan, but what we do is we break it, like even this one, which is 2022 to 2032, we will break it in 5-year cycles so that you can review and see where we are going. The beauty of the plans that we've had before is that we've actually exceeded the expectations that we had in terms of just putting up, whether it is infrastructure. We have 6 cables. We just recently launched the Peace cable, which landed, and that cable alone is more capacity than all the other cables combined.
All the other 5?
Yes, all other 5. It's over 16 terabits of capacity that is coming in. It's faster, it's newer, it's better. But, these are things that are happening. It's private sector investment, $400 million, which is a huge, huge amount of money. That's over 45 billion shillings that they've invested just in the cable. So they looked at our plan, they looked at where the country is going, and they saw that not only are we matching the plan, we're moving forward. So we promised we would put the data protection laws in place, and we would hire the data commissioner. Now look, today Amazon have just launched their local node, because the rules and the laws we promised would be in place have all been put in place. So they invested earlier, now they're expanding the investment. So those roadmaps really help to make sure that you're harnessing and bringing all the different players together so that the country itself grows and gets better.
You're talking about connecting about 25,000 public schools?
40,000 public schools, because that's primary and secondary. We want to make sure they're all connected. Most of the universities are already connected. They are part of the KenNet network. So we want to make sure all these are connected as well.
What impact will this have on our students?
I think the first thing is education has changed. Now we've gone into competency-based curriculum. So people are not necessarily being taught to cram. They're being taught to understand. And the volumes of information that are available online will allow any of these students to be able to go online. Obviously, the curation of the content will be done through the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, so that we're not exposing our kids to content that they shouldn't have. But it means they can, first of all, be able to access whatever documents they need. Number 2, they can access each other. They can access other teachers. Teachers can connect to other teachers. They can all start engaging. And the result is that the corpus of information that we will have, the quality is going to be improved because more and more people are adding to it. So someone in a remote location is able to travel to another using even virtual reality because they have the connectivity in place. And then it will put us at par with the rest of the world, because when you want to innovate, when you want to do better things, you have access to the content, you have access to the information, and of course all the other things that come with having access to the internet. So it's an important part. It's communication, and that's critical.
I mean, it's proper to do that, especially in urban centers, in Nairobi, in Kisumu, in Mombasa. But how are you going to ensure that the same services enjoyed by students in Nairobi are enjoyed in Ict village in Baringo County, for example? The Constitution and devolution has helped us. Actually, we have a lot more urban areas in the country than we used to have before. The requirements to be able to ensure all these places are connected. Today, every county and sub-county already has fiber. We've connected them. As far as the mobile networks are concerned, we are at 96% already with 3G and 4G coverage across the country. You've seen the President's last mile project on energy, ensuring that we've got now over almost 8 million homes that are connected to electricity.
So part of the whole process of ensuring that the schools are all connected, as well as the villages around the schools, is what you're seeing happening now. Everybody questioning, is every polling station connected? And actually, when you listen to IBC, when they've given, although they haven't given the full list, we're seeing we're already at more than 95% coverage of all these polling stations. So from that perspective, there is nothing remote about the country. The Constitution says we must connect everybody, says we must ensure we have 100% coverage. And so through the Universal Service Fund, we're ensuring that the coverage is there. But again, most of the infrastructure, the networks are being built by the mobile operators who we are licensing, and the competition is making that happen. So you're seeing 5G and other services also coming in. So I'm confident we'll be able, especially within this period of 10 years, to have everybody connected.
I know about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the ministry announced that they are going to do an ICT gap analysis within the public service. So how are you going to ensure that even as you invest all this significant investment in terms of infrastructure, the software part of it, that is the training of teachers, training of public services carried out?
I think you can put all the infrastructure you want in the world. If there are no people to use that infrastructure or to make it useful, then you're going nowhere. If you look at the services we're providing, whether it is on e-citizen or in Huduma centers, there's actually nothing you can provide without people. The only challenge would be if those people are not equipped. So it is a mandate that we've actually been putting in place. We've hired a lot of ICT officers already, all of them with the computer science or computer engineering degrees, and are coming in and going to all these different institutions. We have hired, through the Presidential Digital Talent Program, now it's over 2,500 young people that have come, and they leave university, they come and engage, or they're coming in as interns, they work for private sector, they work for government. All those are critical. But what we're doing now is, through some of the partners, we're doing an ICT skills gap audit across the whole civil service, so that one, we know what skills we have, where we have those skills, and where we need to train and bring other people on board. You remember probably the last time we were having these interviews, you would be asking me questions about IFMIS, because IFMIS is having this problem. We haven't talked about IFMIS in a long while, because not only did we train people, but we ensured that the stability of the network, the infrastructure is in place. And usually that is the one thing that counties would have complained about. All those are working. So we have a lesson that we've learned on how to train, how we need to bring people on board, and that's what we're doing, even with this master plan.
When you look at the master plan, it also talks about digitizing about 5 billion records, public records. That calls for significant amount of storage capacity. How do we plan to roll out that process, and what kind of manpower will be required to execute such a huge mandate?
You'll be happy to know that our national data center, which we built at Konza, alongside the other data centers that we have, that 5 billion will not even be 5% of the storage and processing capacity that we have there. We've already significantly invested for the future to make sure we have significant capacity, not just for government, but also for private sector, so that all this digitization that we're doing, because we're digitizing whether it is lands records, whether it is health records, whether it's all the education records, all our records, and putting them there. That allows us to have a lot of flexibility. And you've seen there's also all these investments that private sector is making, whether it is the data centers that Amazon is putting in place, or Safaricom, or the East African data center of Liquid. All these people are putting up infrastructure that will be available to us as government. And of course, the cloud and all the other services that are there. So one, I think digitization is not something that we can ask whether it's going to happen. It will happen. So the question is, are we going to be ready? And as government, we're making sure we planned, we put in the right infrastructure and the right capacity, so that even as we digitize, we are putting all that into a system that is secure, manageable, with all the protections of the data commissioner and others, to ensure we will actually move smoothly without any hindrance. So my assurance to you is that we have sufficient capacity. Not we will have, we actually have. It's already in place, and you can go to Konza just to see an example of what we have.
And what is going to be the role of the private sector in the implementation of this master plan?
I think the private sector has a very, very big role. For the areas where commercially government has to provide certain services. For instance, the digital ID, Huduma number, that is only government that can provide. But when you have provided the Huduma number, then it makes it easy for mobile operators to register people. It makes it easy for banks to be able to register people and to know who these people are. It helps security services. And for private sector, now they can trust that when you present your ID, your Huduma number, that you're the one. They can trust when you've gone to borrow that you're the one, which then means people don't have to continuously come and physically be identified and so on. So we're putting in safeguards and systems in place that will now allow private sector to know, one, this is what the government has put in place, but they themselves are the ones that are going to do business. They're the ones that are involved in innovations. They're the ones that will now make services become better and better. Yes, there are those services we provide as government, as I've mentioned, Huduma number, maybe the ID, the passport, but all the other services is private sector. Whether it is education, whether it is health, government will provide, but also private sector will provide all the engineering work, so many things.
Talking about Huduma number, and we definitely know the challenges, this process has faced, since it was launched in 2018. The master plan also talks about a smart ID with a unique identifier. Is it the same as Huduma number, or this is going to be a different?
It's the Huduma number. And Huduma number, now we are rolling it out. We have gone through all the processes. Whereas it took time, I think that time was good, because we've been able to put in place all the requirements that the country has to ensure that people's data is managed, is secure, and nobody has data that they don't need. So all that process has assisted us, not just for Huduma number, but for all the other requirements. Those are critical. Like maybe I shouldn't give examples, but when you look at where we are headed, people who are collecting data, they must manage that data. Data in future is the oil. Is the future of even business. So if people have your personal data, whether it is health data or financial data or legal data, you want to be able to have control of that. And so as we move on, Huduma number has helped ensure that all those areas will be well taken care of. So now we are confident that the systems, the work that has been done will ensure for the future we are quite safe.
Talk about the planned regional submarine management and maintenance and depot. What exactly is that? So
there are now so many cables on the East African coast, even West Africa, in all these areas. And we want to be able to attract the ships and the people who repair these cables so that they can actually come and be based here in Mombasa, be based here in Kenya. God has blessed us. We're very central to the whole region. So we've been in talks and discussions to see if we can attract such players to come here so that when there is maybe a fiber cut or new fibers need to be laid and so on, they're being done out of Mombasa. And that's quite important. Now we have fiber being built actually from the east coast to the west coast via Congo. I mean, we now have a huge East African community because DRC Congo is now part of the East African community. So putting a hub where we're managing all our connectivity around the region is critical. And so we've been discussing and interacting with some of these companies and trying to see how we can get them to come and be based here in Kenya. Hopefully soon they will be able to come. A lot of work is going into that. And this is the President's vision of ensuring that Kenya is a hub for not just the data and all that, but also the infrastructure. And that, we're getting one continent.
Still on the issue of depot, I know in Africa, it's only South Africa that has a submarine maintenance depot. How significant is this kind of an establishment in Kenya?
We are currently seeing the number of cables coming in increasing significantly. And, you know, people will continue to rely on these cables more and more. Now, if there is a cut and people are relying on it, it's the same question people have on mobile money, that if M-Pesa stops working today, what are we going to do? So we must make sure there's proper redundancy, that there's proper management to ensure that these services that we're relying on, we're becoming more and more digital, are secure and can be taken care of in case there is a technical problem. And that's why it's critical that we have these services available. Otherwise, if we don't, then we would have to wait for a ship to come from Dubai or to come from South Africa or other places to come and rescue us. Remember, and just to give an example, when COVID came, we didn't have even ability to produce our own PPEs or ventilators, and we were even more importantly testing for COVID. Remember, we used to send samples to South Africa to test whether there is COVID or not, and there was a delay. We don't want that even on technology. We want things to be happening at home, and that's why we want to put this in place.
You talked about increasing connectivity in Kenya, and you're talking about a connectivity rate of almost 95%. But when you look at the interactions, of Kenyans with all this connectivity, it's quite low, at about 35%. How do we plan to upscale this so that the usage is commensurate with the investment?
I think I may want to correct. I hear you saying it is 35%, but remember, we had the discussion of we want to digitize government. All those documents, we need to put them into the data center. But if we put a data center that can only take what we need today, then we'll only be using 35%. But we've put, we'll be using 100% or 95% as you would want. But we've put in enough capacity so that we have more time to be able to build and work. I would say today we have over 37 million Kenyans that are using technology, that are using their mobile phones, which means that with all this usage, it is high. It is not only 35% of Kenyans that are accessing and using. When you use technology, it's not necessarily that you have to be the one using, for instance, the fiber cable. The fiber cable is probably being used by a broadcaster, by a mobile operator, and you're using your mobile phone. So you're actually a user, but it's not always quite visible. So there's a lot to be done to increase on people's everyday usage of ICTs. But I would say in Kenya, we are using a lot more than 35%.
But in terms of, when you look at, mobile connectivity in this country, you're talking about more than 100%. But, when you look at the number of people who access, internet or who interact with the digital space using the mobile phone, is about 40%. How then do we encourage more people? And the question of cost, cost of gadget, has always been a challenge in this country. How do we encourage more people, to tap into the ICT space by, number one, making it cheaper to acquire gadgets, and number two, lowering the cost of what you call data or broadband in this country?
I think the first thing is that the government's responsibility is policy and regulation. What happens in terms of usage is we allow the private sector. The private sector is the one that determines the pricing, is the one that determines even the services that people are getting. And the competition that we have is what continues to bring more people and more users into the space. So it's not very clear which service you're saying, because if you're saying already over 37 million Kenyans are using mobile phones, then which ICT service are you saying is at 40%? Is it that people, if you look at how many people are paying their taxes, now most of that is online, so taxpayers on iTax are able to use that. Those numbers are more than the numbers you're giving. So I'm not quite clear which service.
What I exactly mean is, I mean, you see in this country, majority of people, they use mobile phones to make calls, to send SMSs, or to receive phone calls. But a mobile phone is supposed to be more than that. It's supposed to be more than that. It's supposed to have video calls, it's supposed to be your office, it's supposed to make a lot of connections. And that's the question I'm asking. So then how do we encourage more people? And you have somehow responded by saying that the moment we put more government services, more services on internet, then a lot of people will definitely be forced to go that direction. But in the interest of time, because we have to close, do we have an idea of how much it's likely to cost this country to implement this master plan?
I think there's taxpayers' money on the things that we need to do, and then there's a private sector money, there's even the consumer money. If you look at where we are today, you can't give just one number, but I would say close to $40 billion. $40 billion. $40 billion. 4.2 trillion. Is what we've been discussing just on Smart Africa, ensuring that we connect all the countries together and ensure everybody's got the connectivity that they need. These are some of the areas, and you're talking of over 10 years. The investments will actually increase. So I would say the portion of Kenya, maybe it's 10 or $20 billion that we need to invest over the next 10 years. But that is, the government portion will be a much smaller percentage compared to what private sector itself is investing. So if you look at the mobile operators, if you look at most of these multinationals that are coming in, what they're investing, if you look at the salaries that they're paying their engineers and all those people, it's a huge amount. And so our aim is to make sure that the sector itself is growing in its contribution. We want to go to at least 20-30% of GDP in terms of our contribution. I have not talked even about e-commerce. E-commerce has continued to expand and grow. And as it continues to grow, we are being able to see that we're even linking with all the border operators. Because again, they have the transport capabilities, and as they get their gadgets and devices, they can actually start playing in this space. So there's a lot of investment all around that is going to come in and take us actually where we need to go.
As we wind up, 10 years is not quite a long period. We shall still be here, God-giving life. How different will Kenya be then from now in terms of the ICT ecosystem?
I would say, so far, if I look back, I've just been amazed at the pace and the speed at which Kenya has adopted in technology. I'm just impressed that, from the leadership of His Excellency, people have followed. You've seen companies investing on the government side. You've seen all these new investors coming here into the country. I can tell you he had even personal conversations with people like Amazon or Microsoft to get them to come and invest here and provide those assurances. So it's going to be dependent on how do we choose our leaders going forward. If we choose leaders that are going to continue with the trends and the trajectory we have actually put in, that will allow investors to come in and push us forward, I expect we're going to be mesmerized. We're going to see new things. When you look at all these new things of virtual reality, artificial intelligence, the things that are moving on, we're going to see great things happen. But we must make sure that as a country we continue with our policies that are working and building this country so that we're not actually moving backwards. But if we find ourselves with leadership that's not moving us in the right direction, then we could slow down. But at this stage, I think we are fortunate that we've got a visionary leader who has led us through this whole process. Can we ensure that that's what we continue with?
Very good. Anything else?
That's it.
Very good. Asante sana and all the best.
Thank you.
Well, we've been talking to the Cabinet Secretary in charge of ICT use and innovation, Mucheru, on what is contained in the digital master plan and what all these contains for the country. You have, of course, heard it from him. We look forward for a connected Kenya. My name is Kimani. You have been watching Inside Government. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.